Hi, everybody. Today, I'm going to start a new series of podcasts. And what I really want to talk about in this series is going to be books, books that changed my mind. And I'm going to go through a few important books that have really contributed to my political philosophy and to my understanding of how the world potentially could or should be working. And it really informs a lot of my policy positions. Now, I know that you guys know that if two people see a crash, for example, and a police officer asks them both to give the witness account, and two people saw the same crash, you're going to get a lot of facts that are different, and that comes from their perspective. Now, we all have perspectives that are really informed by our culture, by our religious traditions, by our value systems, and by our own personal experiences. So it's important to kind of understand where you're coming from as far as the lenses that you wear every time you look at facts and how you interpret those facts, and to understand that other people might not interpret those facts in the same way that you do. And it's important to understand that. And that's a big hurdle that we need to get over as we think about political philosophy and what's going to be important. So today I'm going to show you a couple of books that I have read that have contributed to my way of thinking. And I'm going to pick one of these at a time and kind of go through them and review them briefly in different segments because I don't want to go too long on any one of those. But let's get started. Now, this is not a book. This is actually a magazine. It's called Foreign Affairs. And now it's making me yellow because the bright white here is messing up my color. But the magazine Foreign Affairs is basically it's a mouthpiece of the State Department. And so a lot of times when you read Foreign Affairs, you're going to find essays that perhaps were invited by the State Department. And that's kind of something that you have to bear in mind as you're reading this. So it is really it's a very good resource, but you just have to know where the resource is coming from. I'm going to actually start out with Future Shock by Alvin Toffler. And Future Shock is a book, I think I read it like when I was about 10 years old, back in the 70s. I do remember this book coming out and how big of a splash it made back in the 70s. So I bought a new copy of it and I was reading it again. And the thing I got out of this book was predictions of how people in society were going to react to the accelerating rate of social, cultural, economic, and global change that they're going to see coming up in the future. It's fascinating. And pretty much everything he said in 1970 that seemed so unbelievable at the time came true. But this is probably one of the first books that I ever read that really changed my way of thinking about society. Future Shock by Alvin Toffler. Another book that had an impact in how I think about policy was written by none other than Oprah Winfrey. It is called What Happened to You? And the reason this book, I believe, is so important and the reason that it formed my political opinions in a way is because it helped me to understand neurobiology and human behavior and human development and apply it to how I was thinking about this other group, which is how people in society are going to process accelerated rates of change. So these two books are both very much, I guess they're biopsychosocial books as applied to political theory, because really politics is people, people are biology, and biology can actually be changed in a lot of ways that I don't actually want to get into right now, because we're just going to do book reviews. We're not going to talk about neurobiology. But so these two books, it's very interesting to think about how society is changing and why it's changing and how that affects people's brains. Yes, it literally affects people's brains. It's fascinating to think of. And I'll give you a little taste of that when I review both of these books. As I go on, obviously this book is going to be really important. It's called Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam. And Robert Putnam is a sociologist who made a lot of observations about how society actually is changing. And it's fascinating, and dare I say, it's predicted by what the two prior books had postulated, and it's fascinating. So this is a very, very thick book, a very thick book, but it's worth it. So that's another good book to read. The Dying Citizen by Victor Davis Hanson, How Progressive Elites, Tribalism, and Globalization Are Destroying the Idea of America. And this is just basically a factual book, and the Destroying America part, of course, is opinion, but I happen to agree with this opinion. And when people, the broader society that I was talking about, they see their culture being ripped away from them, you can imagine that that might not go very well for their mental health. And because we're having such a mental health crisis in America today, it's very important to learn more about our society and what some of the political things we're doing, what kind of harm it's doing to real people, and especially people who have, limited resources. And what can we do to ameliorate that? Unfortunately, there's plenty of people who have the opinion that if you want to make an omelet, you're going to break a few eggs. I don't want to make the omelet. I don't want to break the eggs. I want people to flourish. And that brings me to this book called Better Capitalism. Has a beautiful homemade bookmark in it from someone I got it from at a writing conference. But Better Capitalism is co-written by Paul Knowlton and Aaron Hedges. This book is a fascinating look at why capitalism is failing and how we can make it better. And I know that a lot of people have found that capitalism has harmed a lot of people. A lot of people know that the playing field is uneven. A lot of people know that global finance has been a disaster for the average person, and the wealth inequality gaps are getting incredibly high. But it's not the fault of capitalism, because there is a better capitalism. And I can't wait to talk to you about this book. Another book that I love is San Francisco by Michael Shellenberger. This book is definitely worth a read. It will tell you, and it's well documented, of course, it'll tell you a lot of the reasons that we have so many problems in progressively run cities. And it's not that progressives are bad or evil or mean or wrong. It's just that sometimes the ideas are not, very smart, unfortunately. And sometimes the road to hell actually is paved with good intentions. So I like evidence. I like data. It's much better than ideology in the long run. And that's what Michael Schellenberger thinks too. He's not a conservative, by the way, but he just doesn't want California to like turn into like a sewer, which it kind of has, but that's another story. I am going to talk to you a little bit about this book, I Can't Resist. This is a book about Mao, and this was researched for 10 years. It's by Yang Chong. I won't talk about it further right now, but it's fascinating if you want to get an idea for what communism is and what it does to people. Fascinating read. No book review would be no book review would be complete without the book that I wrote, BoJack Ballot Box. How the two-party system stole democracy. This is a story of what I learned actually trying to run for Congress, and it's not pretty, but it's very easy to read. It's very, very thin. Not because I didn't have a lot more to say, but because I know people probably aren't going to read books that are big. You know, they'll get maybe halfway through it and then they'll just put it on their shelf, because not going to lie, I've done that myself. And then finally, I'm going to review Manufacturing Consent, which is a book by Noam Chomsky. And this is going to be the first book that I review for you. And I'm going to review it as soon as this tape is over. I'm going to tell you this is going to be the first book that I review. It's about fake news. Yeah, it's about fake news, but you're going to be very surprised who were the first to come out with the information about fake news. And guess what? It wasn't Republicans. Yes, Noam Chomsky is kind of a communist, but that doesn't mean that this book isn't true, because it is. So that's just a list of some of the books that are on my bedside table that I enjoy reading and looking at, and I like applying some of the lessons that I've learned to political theory. And I think that if you want to read them, you would really do well to, scroll back through this video and get a list of the ones you're interested in. And next, I'm going to be reviewing the book called Manufacturing Consent. So stay tuned, and we will see you very soon.